Hey, how's it going? How's everyone?
Good. It's nice to meet you. For chat, I don't know if you know. This is actually the first time that Lewis and I have chatted for real. So this is always fun for me to get to meet some of the people that I interact with or that I use the stuff that they make for a long time. So Lewis, why don't you say hello and give a little introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lewis. I've been using Vim, I think, since about 2013. Uh, and then I think I switched full time to neovim probably, I don't know, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but I was always aware of it.
Yeah.
But I was like kind of waiting for it to kind of, I don't know, it was always there in the background, but for a very long time, it was like, which one do I use? And then slowly, things started. There was like a divergence of features, and new things started happening
Yeah.
in the event, which was quite interesting. And then I think, 2 years ago, I just did the full switch, and then just like, yeah, started embracing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Most people will know me for the plugin I've developed called Gitsigns,
Yeah.
which is basically just from the intention for it was to just be a basic re-implementation of vim.gitger, and that
Mm-hmm.
was it. So uh, why did I do that? I don't really know. I think I just wanted the project, and lots of Lua plugins were coming out at the time. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, maybe I can just, I want a project. Let's see what happens. Uh, Turns out, all the stuff that's been added in neovim, all the technologies, things like livuv, things like just Lua itself, the
Mm-hmm.
nvim API, has given lots of opportunities to make something that is actually, in my opinion, a lot better than what Gitger was able to
Mm-hmm.
provide. That's not to
Yeah.
say Gitger is a bad plugin. It is one of the best Vim plugins available.
Yeah.
It's just now we have much better things, and we're able to kind of take it to the next level, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about a few of those things, sort of the new technologies that you were able to use in GitGutter that sort of changed the way you were able to develop. Both sort of on like, because it's in Teal, first off, right? So we should talk maybe a little bit about that. But we should also talk about some of the other things that we've exposed in NeoVim Core, some of them now available in 0.6, etc. So I'll let you sort of start where you'd like out of that open ended question.
Okay, so I guess the simplest reason. So yeah, in regards to just general performance and how we've been able to make get signs really quick, I
Mm-hmm.
guess the easiest low hanging fruit was just using Lua to begin with, right? LuaJit.
Yep.
Uh, so it's kind of a meme at this point that rewrite everything in Lua and everything becomes faster. Um, Generally, and we found that for configurations and stuff, that's not always true.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually very, very true for Git signs, and that's pretty much because it's always running in the background and it's always doing lots of processing.
Mm-hmm.
And like every time you do any kind of key press, it's doing, it's just running stuff, doing, running diffs, processing hunks, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems with Vim is that every time you do anything, you've got to parse the Vim script
Yeah.
every time, even in a
Yep.
loop, right? If you've got a
Mm-hmm.
big loop, you've got to pause every statement every time. In Lua, you obviously don't have to do that. You also benefit from, just the JIT optimizations that it's able to provide. So that is just like, you know, without doing anything and just doing a direct port, you get that benefit.
Yeah.
Uh, so so I guess maybe, so that's one thing. The next thing, I guess we can talk about maybe doing the diffs in process.
Yes. Yeah. Let's do it.
So I saw a post. So basically, someone raised an issue on Gitsigns. So it was all working. It kind of had almost feature parity within Gitger. And then someone raised an issue going, I've got a million line file with a ton of changes and Gitsigns is really slow. I was like, why have you got a file with a million lines in it? Like, I was like, whatever. I'm not going to judge. Let's
Mm-hmm.
let's see what happens. Let's see where the bottlenecks are. Let's see what happens. And at the same time, there was also a post on Discourse about being able to use uh, basically the neovim C functions from within Lua using
Yeah.
what LuaJit's FFI module. And
Mm-hmm.
like when I saw this, I was like, that is the closest thing to black magic I've ever seen in programming. Uh, like I know the FFI is a thing, like it's just a general thing in any language, just for doing stuff. But I never seen it before, and when I saw that,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, this is like Pandora's box. We can do all sorts of things now. So I just started playing around with that and just seeing if I could get something to work. So I knew that Vim and neovim have Git's fork of xdiff like within like the code base. Like it's just there because that's how Vim does its diff. It's just basically copied all of Git's diff library. So it was there. I was like, can we use it? Rather than hard coding it to just the Vim, the specific Vim stuff. So yeah, I just played around with that and I was able to get it to work. And then it ended up. So I've got no scientific benchmarks or anything like that on like kind of the performance or anything like that. But just by creating dummy files of 2 million lines and putting changes in on every alternate line, stuff like that, I just could just tell roughly what was going on. And as soon as I added this in, it just got a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting because Vim Git it uses Vim jobs, which are asynchronous. So all the actual diffing itself is done on a sub process, so it shouldn't really block the editor. Whereas doing it through the FFI, it's all in process. It's all it's synchronous. And it turns out the biggest bottleneck was actually just getting the files into the right place for them to be diffed. And in GitGo, so that's all done with temp files. So on every diff, you had to basically write the buffer into a temp file, to get a Git show, to get the version in Git into another temp file, and that's where he was losing all the performance, and it was just thrashing the IO. So by doing it in process, basically, we completely avoid that altogether. And actually, the diff operation, even on massive files, seems to be pretty quick either way. Like I was able to just put the diff functionality, the diff function call in Gitsigns, and I just put it around an arbitrary loop of like 1,000. Didn't notice any performance difference. So that was quite interesting. So I guess, so we've got in-process diffs now, and that was what we've got for neovim 0.5. But in 0.6, we don't use FFI anymore. And now we're using native Lua C bindings. So the reason we went with that was basically the FFI is a hard beast to tame. So basically, if you get anything wrong whilst trying to use the FFI, neovim will just outright crash. Yes. Which is really hard to deal with, and the documentation for using it is good, but it's also, you kind of need to be a seasoned expert to really understand it. And I don't know, I just felt like the xdiff library is there. We can just add some bindings, and then we can just use it, and then any plugin developer can use it, or for whatever reason, it should be pretty lightweight. So that's one of the features that's gone in.
So those bindings are available where?
Right, so just vim.diff.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
very exciting, right? So I think this is one of the other cool bits of using Lua that people maybe don't see right away, right? So one that we talked about earlier is this ability to just like use an external library. But for neovim, there's this additional benefit where it's like, we've already have this really seasoned, well-tested, like performant C code. Well, what if I could just like call that from Lua? And then we can make that happen for plugin authors, right? No need to get or shell out to any other process or anything. And we've exposed vim.diff to do a lot of those calculations for you. So you can use those as just any old plugin in 0.6.
Yeah. So, and then there's one other thing on how I was able to get performance. So I talked about this issue I said where that someone had a 1 million line file, loads of changes in. It was still lagging a bit, even with the FFI change. And I dug around a bit deeper, and basically what I found is that just signs in general in Vim were not implemented for what GitGutter or Gitsigns wants to use them for. So basically, signs in Vim are implemented via a linked list, and every time a line is drawn, it basically has to search through this linked list and find all the signs every time. To do that, and that's it's just horrendously slow. It clearly wasn't like designed for this. It was obviously designed for like, oh, you've got like 5 errors in your code. Here you go. Right. So there's not really much you can do about that. That's kind of like legacy code. So one way we could work around that was basically using the decoration provider that that is available in Lua. And basically, if anyone doesn't know, the decoration provider is basically a way of running callbacks during the kind of screen redraw sequence. So for every time there's a line that gets redrawn, you can basically have a callback. The intention is basically to add X marks, highlights, things like that. And yeah, that kind of, so by doing that, I can basically store all the signs in Lua in a Lua table, which is looked up by an array index as opposed to a linked list lookup.
Yes.
And it ends up being much quicker. So, and it basically means we can only show the signs that are actually visible. So if you've got a inline file with 1,000 changes, you only draw the signs for the ones that's actually on the screen.
Right.
So that actually provided the biggest performance boost for that particular example. I will mention there was a Vim patch to make signs a little bit quicker, because what was actually happening was in the kind of line draw, there was actually multiple lookups of the signs for every line draw, which was really, really inefficient. So I was able to port one of the Vim patches that basically kind of caches at the start of a line draw, made that quicker. So it's alleviated a little bit, but we should redo that at some point. I think. Maybe perhaps Xbox, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would make something interesting. And I think it's been mentioned before, but just as part of X marks, basically, like just doing signs as part of all this same system. But for now, basically doing somewhat of a, I don't know, a more custom version for what you need, which is being able to look those up anytime, is pretty sweet. And it's cool that we're able to get those kinds of things. And another shout out to Bjorn is basically making the ability to just pass Lua functions around randomly to draw things on the screen is very exciting. It allows you to do a lot of stuff that you wouldn't expect to be able to do. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to talk about from Gitsigns. I mean, I think it's cool that you're using Teal in it. I'm remembering the right one, right? This is the
yeah. There's many dialects of Lua.
Yes, right. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about Teal and then some other just thoughts about it, and then we'll chat a little bit, just real quick, about impatient.nvim. I'm going to have to ask chat to be a little patient while we're finishing up our talk about Gitsigns, and then we'll talk about impatient.
Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, Gitsigns is not implemented in Lua, it's implemented in Teal. And Teal is just a really light dialect on top of Lua that basically just adds type annotation. So, if you know what TypeScript is, to JavaScript, Teal is what, TypeScript is to JavaScript, what it is to Lua. The syntax is very, very similar. It's only additive, only add syntax, and changing the syntax, and it just adds type annotations. And I chose to go with Teal just because I like types. I really like types. Whenever I use Python, I always use the type annotations. One of my favorite languages is Scala. Scala is the most type-heavy language you can find. I don't know. I just find reading random source code that I've never seen before, if it's got types in there, I kind of just get an immediate understanding of how it works together. Yeah. As opposed to the kind of duck typing we have in kind of like we do in Lua. Yeah. And it also allows kind of, if you're working with kind of data structures that have specific field names and things like that, and you want to do a refactoring, I don't need to explain why types are useful, but it basically allows you to catch bugs a lot earlier than you would do. Runtime bugs are the worst. Type checking bugs are the best. Yeah, not bugs, errors. Yeah. So yeah, not really too much to say about it. It didn't take me long to port over. The Gitsigns is rendered into Lua, so when you're running it, it's running a Lua, and you can do a direct mapping of the two files, because even though it's generated, it's still very readable. I think at most it just strips out comments. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't used it for any other plugins. I've decided once a plugin reaches a certain threshold of size, then I want to start using types to kind of get some more safety on things. So yeah.
Is there an LSP for Teal? I haven't actually used Teal a lot yet.
There is, but it's like pre-alpha. It's like cool. it just about works. But I found actually just using null ls with Teal is almost just as good as using like Lua language servers, just because you get so many more errors than you would do normally with a Lua language server. Right.
That makes sense.
You don't get code navigation or anything like that, which is a bit of a shame. But
Yeah, well, sometimes you don't with Lua language servers, anyways, due to the dynamic, the
Yeah, yeah,
dynamic nature of it, right? Is it can't always figure that out. So, no, that's pretty cool. I think the last bit for Gitsigns is maybe just chatting a little bit about the use of async await. I think you're using Plenary's most recent async await library there, right? Maybe
yeah.
just chat a little bit about that and sort of how that worked for you, some general thoughts about it, and I don't know, yeah, just what you think about it as a whole.
So to be honest, I think the async await was one of the motivating things that got me to actually make the plugin in the first place. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, some person, I don't know who it was, but I think it's on the Lua language guide that Nano T
Yeah.
has, that basically had a guide on how to do async
Ah.
await in Lua.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yep. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. So I read that, and I think there was another guide as well that showed you how to do like basic like a basic plugin that does some grepping of some kind.
Yep.
So using those plugins together, I was like, oh, this looks like some nice programming. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, I've been using Vim for so long, but I don't want to talk bad about like Vim and stuff. But I really don't like Vim scripts. Like
Yeah.
been one of those things I've had to force to learn and just live with. And being able to like move over to Lua has been so liberating, and it's just allowed me to kind of like, it's just yeah. I don't know what I think we all understand. Just like I just
Yes,
really
I
hate
think we're all in
scripts.
agreement. We're definitely in agreement here. If you're excited about a new neovim release, I think we're all on the same page for Lua.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So yeah, there was a guide on how to use async await, and I was like, okay, let's just do a plugin that uses it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
uh,
cool.
but yeah, and I've not done any async programming before this, so that was like kind of a cool thing for me to kind of learn about. But it's so useful in Gitsigns because the callback hell you would have without it, it would make the code unreadable. Just being able to kind of
Yeah.
have the coroutines in the background work and just call an asynchronous function and return back in the same kind of procedural context is like really really crazy. But it has this, it just comes with its own issues because you don't know what's happened between each kind of function call. So you might go off and do a job and then come back and then all the buffers have been deleted and none of your code works anymore. So you got to be like, add
Yes.
a lot of guards in anyway.
Yep.
Uh, so yeah, that's, and what's it? So shout out to, was it Obermeister who implemented,
Oberblastmeister. Yeah. Hmm.
Oberblastmeister who
Yep.
implemented the last implementation of the async
Hmm.
implementation. It works really well. It's really quick.
Yeah.
Quite happy with it. I hope we could not keep that in plenary for too long and maybe get that in core in some form, or I don't know,
Yeah.
because
I
it's
think
really
we
useful.
have some rough edges to fix for a few things, but I think it would be worth shipping in core eventually. I think the overall design's really quite nice and works well for Lua. It just reuses coroutines and sneakily, like you don't even know. The only bits that make it tough are when you want to use coroutines inside of them. Sometimes it's a little bit unhappy. So we just need to sort of, I think,
Mm,
iron out a few more edges for it. But it would be something I think, especially with a lot of libuv things, being able to write a bit more top-down procedural code rather than writing the like 8 callbacks you need to check the result of if a file exists. Could provide some nice enhancements for people. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point. The async library makes the libuv bindings a lot easier to use because most of those are async anyway.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Or they
yeah,
accept a
without that,
callback. Yeah. So
yeah, it is optional, but you kind of
right.
want to use them most of the time.
Yeah. It's like if it's just as easy to write it async as it is to write it like blocking, you may as well do the async one because it works quite nice that way. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And then maybe we can just chat quickly about Impatient and Vim. A few people were asking about it, so I think it's kind of a fun little plugin to talk about as well.
Yeah, it is. It's quite an interesting one. It's actually quite a simple plugin. So for anyone who doesn't know, Impatient basically just makes require importing of packages in Lua just a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to Python's cache. PyCache does a
Mm-hmm.
very similar thing. It just kind of whenever you load a module, it just kind of dumps it into a file in as a Lua bytecode as well, by the way.
Yep.
And it basically just works around some kind of performance issues that we have with neovim at the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, require is implemented with the was it nvim get runtime files
Yeah, like list
function.
runtime files or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but that's really slow because
Yeah.
it's checking through so many things.
Yep.
I actually looked at the implementation for that, and if you go down deep enough, you find that we're actually creating a bash script and then spawning a subprocess of bash to do all the globbing. I was just like, oh no.
That might
But
be
the
a
thing is,
good
we've
one
been
to
using
do
this
with
for
libuv. That could be kind of fun.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but we've been using this for like that code's probably been there for years and it works
Oh,
perfectly.
yes. Mm-hmm.
But you
Yeah.
know, like at the same time, I saw that was just like, oh, for God's sake. But thank God to Bjorn, who was able to basically do a quick PR that with a very rough concept on how we can do some like hashing of
Yeah.
this, so we can avoid those basically those module lookups as much as we
Right.
can. And I just kind of took that and turned it into an actual plugin that people can use that's tested and as far as I
Yeah.
know doesn't really have any errors I know about at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got a Vim configuration setup that is very Lua heavy with lots of Lua
Mm-hmm.
plugins, you'll like hugely benefit from this. I think it halved my startup time just for Lua plugins itself because
Yeah.
it firstly it completely almost removes. So when loading a Lua module, there's kind of three components. There's the resolution, like actually finding where the module exists.
Mm-hmm.
That was really slow in neovim anyway. There's the
Mm-hmm.
actual loading of the file, so actually reading it in, and then there's the initial kind of execution of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Impatient makes all three of these things quicker because
Yeah.
resolution time goes away almost because you're only loading one file, just the cache file. Once it's there,
Yep.
there's no resolution time. It's just in there. You're just doing a table lookup into
Yeah.
some data structure.
Mm-hmm.
The load time is reduced because you're now loading bytecode instead of
Mm-hmm.
Lua code.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I think just because of that, the execution time reduces as well for whatever reasons. I can't remember why.
Yeah.
But I did see
Yeah,
that's the least it reduces by.
Yeah, I think mine actually reduced maybe even by like a third, or I mean 2/3, because it reduced down
Oh, really?
to like, yeah, because I think it went from about 600. Sorry, chat, 600 milliseconds. I know there's a lot of people in chat who are going to be really upset at me that mine was above 250 milliseconds. I apologize to all of the micro optimizers in chat, but it went down to like 200 just by installing it. But it's because I have a lot of Lua files, like separate Lua files, and like a lot of them just in my own init, not just other places too, where I like to split them and I require them and I reload things and all this other, so it's like, yeah, it was very cool, and it's just fun that it's Lua's the kind of language that was designed to be able to like think about these kind of things, and we can just make it magically faster is what it feels like for me. I just installed the plugin and it was faster.
Yeah, it's like the perfect kind of plugin. It doesn't change anything. It just everything speeds up. So
Yeah.
and yeah, the invalidation is really simple. It's literally just it's just doing libuv. Was it fs stat?
FS
To see
stat,
if
checking the time. Yeah.
that's all it needs to do. And
Yeah.
that seems to be all that we need to do. I haven't found any edge case issues
Yeah.
from using that. And this is really benefits like using like just to mention Gitsigns again because at the start that actually has quite a heavy setup because it has to basically do there's quite a lot of modules there it needs to load,
Right.
and that was like that was kind of everyone's biggest kind of startup heaviest plugin
Yeah.
at startup.
Yeah.
Which really annoyed me because I didn't like being at the top of everyone's list. So I was like, we need to
Yes.
fix this.
Yep. Yeah. Very cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I want to thank you for coming on for all the cool stuff you've been doing, both for the community and in the plugins. So, chat, can everyone give Lewis a clap before he heads out? And yeah, thanks for coming. Do you want to plug anything, Lewis? I mean, we already did Gitsigns and Impatient. Got any other links or anything for people?
I think I've plugged enough. I guess if you just go to my GitHub profile, you'll see everything I'm kind of working on there.
Very cool.
There's a few smaller things, but they're the two main things I think.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on to it.
Yeah, we're happy to do it. We'll just keep on exploring what release streams look like because I don't know what's happening either. All right, awesome. Well, thanks, Lewis. I'll send you off now. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thanks a lot.